Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Lafayette Returns, the 200th anniversary of his visit to Murfreesboro on February the 26th, 1825. I am Jimmy Moore, the president of the Murfreesboro Historical Association, and it is my pleasure to have you all here today. Will everyone please stand for the national anthem? Of the American Friends of Lafayette. You all know the Honorable Harold Thomas, Mayor of Murfreesboro. We have Dr. Sam Howell from Burlington. He will be portraying Lafayette for us. And then we have Mr. Don Summer, who is portraying Lafayette Secretary, Lavage Sir. And I will be portraying Judge Thomas Manny later in the program. All right. Mayor Thomas, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Proclamation. Whereas the town of Murfreesboro and the American Friends of Lafayette are celebrating the bicentennial of the farewell tour of the United States by General Lafayette, and whereas in 1777, during the American Revolutionary War, the young Marquis de Lafayette first rendered service in America by traveling from France to give aid to the colonies, joined in the fight for American independence, and in the process became one of George Washington's most trusted major generals. Whereas as the Battle of Yorktown, in which Lafayette played a major role, ended with Cornwallis' surrender and a decisive American victory that caused the British government to acknowledge the United States of America as a sovereign nation. And whereas for his accomplishments in the service for both France and the United States, Lafayette is known as the hero of two worlds. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Hal Thomas, Mayor of the town of Murfreesboro, do hereby commend General Lafayette for his dedication to the principles of democracy for all, and recognize the celebration of the bicentennial of his farewell tour for the United States and the residents of Murfreesboro, North Carolina, and do further proclaim February 26, 2025 as Lafayette Day in Murfreesboro as a time to remember, appreciate, and celebrate General Lafayette for his service to our nation.
Your invitations replete with kindness and the popular reception that awaits us are truly appreciated. The affectionate manner that I have been received arouses in my heart the most intense emotions of pleasure and gratitude. I thank you for this kind honor.
I recognize Mr. Chuck Schwan.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Thank you, Danny Fiedler, for helping us today, making this all so beautiful. I appreciate it. We'll set things up. It's a special privilege to be here today on behalf of the 1,500 members of the American Friends of Lafayette. I bring you greetings, our warmest regards, and our sincere congratulations on this event. I represent the American Friends of Lafayette as the Executive Director and as the National Bicentennial Chair, both as an unpaid volunteer. It was black hair about a month and a half ago. I'd like to acknowledge a few officers of the American Friends of Lafayette who are in attendance who also serve as unpaid volunteers. First and foremost, our board member, Frank Womble, with his lovely wife, did an amazing job in Suffolk, Virginia, where we just left. Thank you so much, Womble. I'd like to introduce Dr. Patty McClay, who represents the AFL as the Vice Chair for Lafayette's bicentennial events, and she also represents the DAR as their National Chair of the Franco-American Memorial Committee. Patty? I'm going to try to say this without crying. I'd like to acknowledge Dan Hopping, who is the bicentennial chair for Lafayette's events in North Carolina, who I owe a debt of gratitude to and who I love very much. Thank you so much. And finally, our treasurer, secretary, and my lovely wife, who will kill me. No, she actually would prefer I don't mention her, to be honest with you, Bonnie Fritz. I'd also like to acknowledge these two young men in the front row right here, because they're why I'm here today, to educate people about what we're doing. And to educate young people, it really means a lot to me, guys. Thanks for being here. So we're now at the midway point of what we're doing. We started in mid-August. And what's really cool about today is we're finally in a new state. We've been bouncing around between Massachusetts and Virginia for 6 months now, and finally we're moving south, and it's fantastic, and we feel the love, and I just want to say thank you very much for having us today. We are now, it's a 13-month tour, 6,000 miles, 24 states, and Lafayette is on the move after kind of resting in Washington for a while. In general, you look great, I must say. The American Friends of Lafayette had 3 goals. To commemorate Lafayette's visit to places like Murfreesboro on the day that exactly happened 200 years ago, this very moment. To celebrate his life and legacy as a relentless champion of human rights, and to educate the public regarding Lafayette's importance to our nation's history. City and council historical associations are among the most enthusiastic supporters in this effort. It is here that at the local level, where organizers like the Murfreesboro Historical Association and the, is somebody going to clap for that? And the Historic Murfreesboro Commission. Good job, that was well done. Are turning our concepts into reality as we welcome Lafayette back and celebrate him as a lifelong supporter of liberty, equality, and universal human rights. As we remember Lafayette's critical role in achieving our country's independence from Great Britain, we also remember his brave comrades in arms, who, like Lafayette, left their homes to join the Patriots' cause. Members of the Hertford County Regiment of Militia fought at the battles of Great Bridge, Charleston, and Hillsborough. Their service and their sacrifices are certainly not forgotten. Viva Lafayette, Viva Murfreesboro, and Hertford County.
I will just say a few thanks of my own, particularly to the Historic Murfreesboro Commission, the President, Mr. John Parker here today, who are sponsoring our reception, which will immediately follow this. We have a number of volunteers with the Historical Association who have worked to make this happen, and you'll see them in action across the street. And finally, to our office manager, Danny Figler, who did all the work, and they could not have done this without you. So now we're going to turn to the story of Lafayette's visit to this town. I wish to begin by directing your attention to these flags hanging behind me. These are the banners of the French regiments who fought in America during our war for independence. These regiments are as follows: Royal Comtois, Royal Roussillon, Touraine, Agenois, Auxerrois, Bourbonnais, Cambrésis, Foix, Hanold, Saintonge, Belzunce, Dillon Irlandais, Walsh Irlandais, Viennois, Armagnac, Auxonne Artillerie, Brie, Champagne, Gâtinais, Metz Artillerie, and Soissonnais. These natural silk reversible flags are exactly like the originals, most of which were destroyed during the French Revolution. The drawings for the reproductions were reproduced by the Army Museum in Paris. These banners were presented to the town of Murfreesboro by the French government as part of the national bicentennial celebrations in 1976, which means they've been here now 50 years. The ceremony of presentation took place in this room on December 11th of that year. There was a program recreating the welcome ceremony of 1825. Judge J. William Copeland was narrator. Hugh Vincent represented Judge Thomas Manning. The Reverend John Calkins portrayed Lafayette. And Monsieur Jean-Pierre Massé, senior counselor of the French Embassy, made remarks. The standard account of Lafayette's visit is found in Dr. Thomas C. Paramore's The Ancient Maritime Village of Murfreesboro, 1787 to 1825. I shall quote from Dr. Paramore extensively. The morning of Friday, February 25th, dawned cold and clear over Murfreesboro, a blessed relief after the torrent of rain that had fallen during that week. Late in the morning, a notice flashed around town that all citizens should present themselves at the William Street office of Attorney Thomas Manning for an important town meeting. A crowd gathered at Manning's office in a few minutes and was informed that Murfreesboro was to be visited next day by Gilbert du Motier, Marquis de Lafayette. The news was, in this quiet community, nothing short of sensational. Lafayette was a household word throughout Europe and America. The great hero of the American Revolution had, in the decades since that time, further enhanced his reputation as a distinguished leader in the French Revolution and in the governments that succeeded that revolution. To be permitted to serve as host to this exalted figure was one of the greatest honors that could have been bestowed upon any American town. Yet, with only one day to prepare for it, the citizens of Murfreesboro could well feel that they were about to be humiliated for want of an appropriate reception. As Lafayette's carriage rattled down the road from Suffolk toward Murfreesboro next day, on the first leg of the Frenchman's tour of the southern states, Murfreesboro was in a delirium of activity. Dr. Lawrence O'Brien, Louis Meredith Cooper, and John W. Southall were on their way with the handsome carriage of the latter to meet the general at Somerton, Virginia, just north of the state line, and then escort him to Murfreesboro. Arrangements for the reception were the responsibility of a committee that included Dr. Thomas Dwyer, Dr. Thomas Borland, Messrs. William and John G. Ray, Thomas Manny, and merchant James Morgan. At the Indian Queen Inn on Broad Street, Proprietor Moses Clement and his staff were hard at work preparing a suite for the visitor to spend the night, decorating the parlor for an evening of dancing and music, and making arrangements for a considerable banquet at which the Marquis would be the honored guest. Outside, a brace of cannon belonging to the local militia company, Colonel Benjamin Camp's Blues, as they were known, were loaded so that their firing would inform Berkeley County at the moment of Lafayette's appearance. An arch was raised at the east end of Broad Street, which, decorated with evergreens and illuminated with torches, would welcome Lafayette into the bosom of the community. Rains that continued intermittently during Friday night and Saturday made Lafayette's progress from Suffolk slow and tedious. It was already long after dark on Saturday evening, February 26th, when Lafayette, who had boarded Mr. Southall's carriage at Manny's Ferry on the Chowan River, crossed Hill's Ferry a few miles below Murfreesboro. Approaching the town, the carriage started over Figures Creek at what is now Worrell's Mill and sank up to the axle in mud. The tired horses strained but could not budge the vehicle, and the accompanying escort looked on in dismay as the reception seemed to be spoiled for Lafayette. Auguste Levasseur, Lafayette's cultured private secretary, later had occasion to describe these harrowing moments. Our late arrival was like a rout in the night. The length and the bad condition of the road had harassed our horses, and we thought for a moment we would be obliged to sleep at the foot of the hill on which the town is situated. An enormous trunk of a tree was burning on a neighboring hill, the light of which showed our distress. The illumination of Murfreesboro presented the appearance of a town given up to the flames. The sound of cannon, which echoed on our right, was like a battery taking us in flank. Neither the cries of our escort, the sound of whips, nor the imprecations of our coachman made our horses move, while sinking in the mud up to their knees. They seemed to have taken root and refused to make the least effort to extricate us from this unpleasant situation in which they kept us for nearly an hour. At last, around 9 p.m., the carriage was worked loose and moved up the hill and through the lighted arch into Broad Street, where a cheering crowd greeted the fabled visitor. At the community building, Lafayette emerged and was conducted into the structure where Judge Thomas Manny, whose ancestors had come from France more than 100 years before, waited to deliver the general welcome of the Murfreesboro community. After the words of Thomas Manny, Lafayette rose and delivered what the newspapers termed a fitting reply. The general and his party were then conducted across the street to the Indian Queen Inn, where a banquet awaited them. Since it was nearly midnight when the dinner ended, the ball was called off. Lafayette was allowed to retire. Next morning, he breakfasted at the Indian Queen, exchanged good wishes with leading citizens, and climbed into his carriage for the day-long journey to Halifax. Several Murfreesboro citizens, including Dr. O'Dwyer and John W. Southall, accompanied the general as far as Northampton County Courthouse, now Jackson. Here, North Carolina's official delegation from Raleigh would meet Lafayette the same day. And so ended Murfreesboro's interaction with Lafayette. We were the first community in North Carolina to welcome the hero of two worlds, and we had done so with aplomb. And now I shall be Judge Thomas Manny. General Lafayette, in obedience to the directions of your fellow citizens who surround you, I bid you a hearty welcome to this village. Your presence forcibly recalls the recollection of that eventful period which terminated in the establishment of our liberties. That the day which brings you amongst us should be esteemed one of the happiest of our lives cannot be a subject of surprise. And you, sir, those who enjoy the glorious distinction of soldiers of the Revolution joyfully behold the beloved and gallant chief who led them on to victory and to honor. Those of us who have risen up in another generation behold in you the original of that picture of excellence which our forefathers have impressed upon our hearts. We have been told of the distinguished youth who could spurn the allurements of pleasure and the fascination of rank, and nobly throw his sword into the scale of an oppressed and suffering people. We have heard that at the darkest period of our struggle for national existence, you generously came to our assistance, and with a disinterestedness above all praise, arrayed in our ranks the force of your influence and the power of your arm. We know that with no other inducement than an ardent attachment to liberty and a generous devotion to her cause, you bled and conquered by our side. And, sir, we have been taught to believe that to you, next to our great Washington, we are indebted for the triumph of our arms. These are the recollections which warm our hearts with an intenseness of interest in your welfare. These are the benefits which fill the measure of our gratitude. These are the virtues which command our admiration and applause. We have followed you, sir, in imagination to the camps and courts of Europe, and heard you in the Senate of a great and powerful nation. We have rejoiced in your prosperity. We have wept over your misfortunes. We have at all times seen you the same constant and unvaried friend of freedom. As a fellow citizen, therefore, we salute you as a father of our common country, and we hail you also as a benefactor of the human race and a gallant champion of the rights of man. General Lafayette.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, honored officials, Madame, Monsieur, mes amis, I stand before you tonight thankful that you have stayed to this late hour and look around the room, which I'm so grateful to be inside with this miserable weather of late. Thank you. I travel with my secretary, Auguste Lavasseur, who is recording the events of the trip. Thank you, sir. I also am traveling with my son, George Washington Lafayette. And for this trip, we have a friend who's traveling with us also, Dan Hopping, from the borough of Raleigh. I wanted to just say a few words. Let the present generation be infused with the sacred obligations that have been imposed on it by our forefathers, who have given us the freedoms we enjoy today. It remains to us to share in the defense and preservation of the benefits we possess. The spirit of the times indicates to us what noble paths we have to pursue. Our time is one of improvement. In a time of peace, let us dream of advancing the useful arts. Let us develop the resources of our land and its might. let us cultivate a true spirit of union and harmony. And in pursuing these great objects, which our current condition so clearly points out to us, let us act always with the feeling and the conviction that the 24 states are united as one nation. And with the blessing of God, may our nation offer so beautiful an example of wisdom, peace, and liberty that it holds the attention and admiration of the world. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
While you remain standing, let us now have the Marseillaise, the French national anthem. This concludes this part of our program here in Town Hall. You are all invited across the street to Hereford Academy for a reception. I request that you allow the general and his party to exit first so they can get over to the building, and he will be delighted to meet all of you over there. Thank you.